What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indies Sports Tickets. And my guy Matt Murphy joins the show, as he usually does on whenever the first day of the week is. And we're just always on the same wavelength because he's sporting an Anthony Richardson shirt. And I just did a whole thing on Anthony Richardson. So now that Pacer season is over, how excited are you for the upcoming football season?
Well, as fun as sorry, my voice is kind
I
of jacked
cannot
up.
hear you, buddy.
Can you hear me now?
That's not good. Wait. Now try. Nope, can't
You
hear
good?
you.
No?
There we go. There it is.
We're
There's
live. Let's
there it
go.
is.
Wouldn't be Tuesday if we didn't have some technical difficulties.
That's right.
Apologies, I've got some allergies going on, but yes. So last night, obviously, unfortunate season coming to an end, but that's why we had to rep the AR shirt as well as for the shoe cup, drinking my much needed water.
There you go.
Ready
So
to go. Football in 100 days. Can't wait.
we're 15 weeks away from the season starting.
Yeah.
We're counting down.
Already.
Amelia's dreading it, but it's fine. She'll be okay.
I can't wait.
We got a long way to go.
Can't
So
wait.
I brought you on to mainly talk hoops, but
Yeah.
since I did just talk about AR and your sporting the shirt, I have to ask, what are your expectations for him this next season?
The beauty of it, I think, is I still see him as like a 1.5 year quarterback. Like in terms of like he has less than half a year of experience. So I mean, I expect it to be exciting, but I really do see him still as. I don't think he should have the same level of expectations of like a CJ Stroud, who's played a full first year and had a lot of success. While AR had plenty of success in the 4.5 games he played, I still think you still view him, sort of like he's played about a half year in my mind. So, I would expect him to be exciting though. Honestly, I think he's still going to make some mistakes that he would, when that rookies might. But I do expect him to be really fun. And this is the type of Colts team and offense that has a lot of fun pieces. So, expect it to be fun. Do I expect them to win 12 games? No, but who knows? Who knows? They've got some talent, so we'll see.
We will. I'm very intrigued to see how they look. Joined by my guy Matt Murphy, former basketball coach, professional sports viewer as well. On top of all things, number one ambassador for the city of Indianapolis. So if you're trying to get people to move here, this is the guy that
Yes,
you
sir.
call.
Yes,
So
sir.
I'm interested to see how they look. I think they should make the playoffs. I think that's a fair expectation, especially given the schedule. I don't think their schedule's too daunting.
Yeah.
So like, if they make the playoffs, like
How many wins do they need to get to the playoffs, though?
10,
10.
10
Okay.
probably.
They can get to 10 with the schedule they have. People key players staying healthy. They should get to 10.
They should. I'm excited to watch AD Mitchell, man. Like
Right,
people keep
man.
telling me how great he's gonna be,
Yeah.
and we'll see though. I'm trying not to get too excited. Like
Yeah.
he is a rookie. It takes these guys to kind of come along a little bit, but it has not taken Andrew Nimhard very long to come along and be impactful. Games 3 and 4 reminded me of Jalen Brunson in 2022 when he was playing for the Mavs and Luka went out. Very similar of like, see this guy step up, he's got the ball more, and it's like, oh, this guy can kind of shoulder an offensive load. What'd you think about him in games 3 and 4?
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely gotten a lot of attention now, which is great. Just nationally, I think a lot of people are noticed over the last 2 games. Like, hey, I mean, both games having like 25 plus and like 10 and 9 assists. So, my brother Eric, he said a lot this past week. Like Nimhard's going to earn himself a big contract and probably play himself off of the Pacers if he's not careful. Considering he's got 2 more years left on his contract, and it depends what they do with Pascal and everything. But a lot of people are going to be due to be paid around when Nimhard's going to be due to get paid for the Pacers, and so he was outstanding. I think he really showed that he could be really, really good. I do think, keeping in mind that his season averages wouldn't say that he's a star. I was honestly, this is going to be really interesting offseason. I mean, he played well in the postseason in general, but those 2 last games, right? There's so much hype. And I just tend to be more like, hey, let's see how he does in a different role maybe next year. Hopefully, give him the ball a little bit more, given he's shown that he can handle that responsibility. Would be interested to see him. Uh, what happens with TJ McConnell, given you have Nemhard run the show, run the point, and do a really good job of it in these last couple games, and honestly did a pretty good job when Halliburton was out earlier in the year. So what do you do with McConnell then? Like, do you pay him? Um, and if you pay him, does that stunt some of Nemhard's usability as a point guard? It's interesting. They've got a lot of decisions to make on, and that's certainly one of them. Like with how good Nemhard has been, what do you do with TJ McConnell?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just excited to see him develop and grow. I mean, um, this is a big step, and believer in, hey, everything that happens can be used for good. And Halliburton going out, and certainly even the Pacers getting swept like that, that's one of the things that you see that turns out for good, that's going to end up where they're going to be better because Nimhard, I think you saw him mature right in front of your eyes over the last couple of years.
Yeah. This is my guy, Matt Murphy, former basketball coach and just lover of all things Indy. We're we're talking Pacers here, and I think that the reason why the Pacers lost this series is because one, the Celtics are just more experienced. I think we're seeing the same thing in the Mavs and the Wolves series of the team that's been there before is
Yeah,
going to win the series. But the other thing is like Pacers just don't have enough wing defenders. Like they've got Neesmith to put on Tatum, and then no one left for Jalen Brown. And Jalen Brown had quite the series because of that. And that's the other thing. How important is the development of Jarris Walker over this summer in order for the Pacers to potentially compete with a team like the Celtics
yeah.
next season?
So I was about to stop you and say, well, they did have a wing. They did have a really good wing defender, but he just didn't see the floor. As Jarris Walker. He's the type of player that I think they needed to be playable in this series, especially when Halliburton goes down. I love Doug McDermott as a person, as a player in the league. He shouldn't be on the floor in this type of series. I mean, in a bench shooting role, maybe, which he was, but like if you put Jarris on the floor, he's just going to give you so much more defensively. And honestly, Doug didn't give you that much offensively either. I mean, I think he made a couple shots. He made a tip in, and then he made a three the last couple games, but he's not giving you that much besides just spacing the floor anyway. So his development, I think, part of what I was honestly not thrilled with how they handled his development this year, because there were moments where you actually needed a guy with his skill set. It wasn't just, hey, throw him out there to get experience. It was, you kind of handcuffed yourself in the regular season when you didn't play him and you played him in the G League a little bit, and hey, we're just not going to really give him minutes. You kind of handcuffed yourself in the playoffs because it's unfair to just throw him in that spot.
Yeah.
But the reason why you play him in spurts in minutes in the regular season is so he'd be ready to take a step if needed in the playoffs. But they couldn't really do that because of how they handled him in the regular season. So his development is key, yes. But honestly, you would have just liked to see them manage him a little bit better in the season, where there were just spots where you could have plugged him in a little bit more. And when he was in, he honestly showed a ton of promise, like with as a defender, as a shooter, as a passer, just
As a
playing
passer,
in general.
especially.
Yeah, so it just getting him in minutes more consistently, even in spurts. I think they missed opportunities to do that in the regular season. Ergo, you can't put him in the postseason and like that. So his development would be big, but it's unfortunate the way he was handled this year. Honestly.
It really was. I have flashbacks as you were talking about him of the game against the Clippers where he's defending Kawhi, and he does a really good job. You know me. Like I just like when I'm bored, like I'm gonna watch some sort of sport. So
Yeah,
like I watched some Mad Ants games this year, and
yeah,
they've got Jarris like playing point guard. And
yeah,
part of me is like, I like that he has the ball in his hands, but the other part of me is like, he's never gonna have the ball in his hands when he plays for the Pacers.
yeah,
And because of Halliburton and now Nimhard, and if they keep McConnell, like he's gonna have the ball. And
yeah,
so I'm just really interested to see how he looks going forward. The biggest thing though is, can he catch and shoot? Can he play defense? If he can do
yeah.
those two things, he's going to play 25 minutes a night next year. You were talking about off-season decisions coming up for the Pacers with McConnell. How does Matherin's development impact that too? Because before he got hurt, he was reaching a new level of like hitting step back threes, like the shot creation and the shot making
Yeah.
was looking like it was about to go up. How does that impact what you think they're going to do in the offseason?
It's so difficult, John, because you have so many good young players. Like I'll give Kevin Pritchard a ton of credit here. Like they've drafted really well over the last couple of years. They really have, and they've got a lot of good young pieces. You got a lot of decisions to make. Like I think the key in this has been Shepard playing just really efficient, quality minutes on both ends. He was starting in the Eastern Conference Finals as a rookie. Like I'm not saying that's going to continue, but you throw him into the mix too, and you just have so many kind of guard slash small wings on this roster, and you just run out of space. You really do. Like you look at these really good teams across the league. A lot of them don't play and aren't as deep as the Pacers, and that depth got them somewhere this year. But it comes to a point like young depth, really good young depth means people are going to need to be paid down the road in a couple years, right? If they're showing out now, even on the bench, like Matherin on the bench, he's going to need to get paid. Like teams are going to want to have a guy like him, a guy like Nimhard. So you just got a lot of decisions to make. I think right now, I think you're in an interesting spot because of that young talent. What do you do with guys like Obi Toppin? Like does keeping Obi Toppin take a spot that take Jarris Walker minutes, right? Like
Yeah.
if you re-sign Pascal, like what do you see Obi as, and what do you see Jarris Walker as? Does that affect? I mean, I loved Obi Toppin this year. I thought he was excellent. He really was really good. Like I would love to have him back on the team. But who do you not play because of keeping Obi Toppin? Who are you not playing by re-signing TJ McConnell in terms of the Nemhard having the ball in his hand? So they've got a lot of decisions to make, man. But the good news is the good problems to have. They're really
Yes.
good problems to have. You would love to have a young core like they do with a couple superstars on the team, or stars on the team like Halliburton and Siakam, and then some veteran presence with Turner, and then a ton of young talent. Like that's awesome. It's great.
Yeah, it really is. Like the Pacers are in a good spot. Once again, joined by my guy Matt Murphy, former basketball coach, has watched a ton of basketball during these playoffs,
Yeah.
and I think you're exactly right. Like this is like the Pacers are ahead of schedule. That is kind of the point that I've really been trying to drive home. Of like their over under win total this year was set at like 34.5,
Yep.
and we look up and they're in the Eastern Conference Finals. This team is ahead of schedule. The Halliburton emergence has been awesome. Pascal Siakam, I feel like an idiot because I came on the air and I was like, should they give him a max? And then he just went nuts for over the course of the next like 8 games. And so like they're in a really good spot going forward. The thing that I'm really intrigued by is what does the rest of the East look like, and how does that impact what they do? Because like I think we saw the Timberwolves these past couple off seasons. They're like, we're gonna have to beat Denver, and so they built this roster around the idea of like we have to beat them, and it works. But then they ran into Dallas, and they're gonna lose. And when we look at the East, like I think there's a couple other teams that are young and look pretty similar to Indiana. Like Orlando's gonna be a problem going forward. Like they're gonna be really good. Boston's not going anywhere. Brown and Tatum are like 27 and 28, 26 and 27.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to build going forward. But I think a major part of any team and how they play is their head coach. There have been questions about Carlisle, which isn't surprising because there's not a fan base in the world of any sport that likes their head coach. I'm just convinced
Yeah.
everybody hates whoever their head coach is. Like I'm sure there are Spurs fans out there that don't like Popovich for some reason, right? And
Yeah.
so, what is your opinion on Carlisle? I know we've talked about it a little bit off the air, but how do you think he did in these playoffs?
So any coach that takes this type of team to the Eastern Conference Finals, you have to give their flowers to. Um, I think Rick Carlisle is one of the best, and this is, in my mind, undisputed. That jersey is really tough, by the way.
Thank
That's
you.
so tough. Any coach that produces a historic offense like the Pacers did this season, yeah, he's a great coach. But in my mind, he's more of like a philosophy. He's great with as a philosophy coach. Like and he's even come out and said this. They're not a play team. They're not a run sets team. They're a philosophies team. Like they have philosophies that they stick to on both ends, defensively for better for worse. because they weren't great defensively this year, but offensively, again,
How
historically,
much how much of the defense though is, what they're running scheme wise, and how much of it is they just don't have the personnel to be a good defensive team?
yeah, part of it. I mean, there are parts of it, yes. In my mind, when you miss box outs as much as the Pacers do, part of that is on coaching. That's not a defensive philosophy. That's just straight up like your players aren't boxing out. But part of that is coaching. Like coaches are held responsible for what the players do. And so
Yeah.
personnel wise, yeah, maybe they don't have great defensive personnel, but they do things really poorly that are coachable, if that makes sense, that are
Yeah.
partially enforced by the coach, right? Even though they're not the ones physically doing it like the players are. So we'll say that. But either way, really, really good philosophy coach, like one of the best this season for sure, because of the output that they had offensively. It was incredible, historic. Again, it was a top two in NBA history, offense in terms of offenses. I think, and again, this is where we might disagree. I don't think he's a very good in-game coach,
I would
meaning
agree.
feel for timeouts, meaning, hey, I'm going to let my guys go. You think about just the type of collapses they've had in terms of game one. You have the ball up 3, under 10 seconds left. Game 3, you're up 8 with 2 minutes to go. Even last night, you didn't score for the last 3 minutes and 30 seconds. I think Nemhard's, I don't know if you saw this, Nemhard's or middle of the game, in-game interview that they had, which I don't like those, by the way. The players should be
I don't
in the
either.
huddle. Like I wanted Nemhard in
Yeah.
the huddle there, and a close or a have to have it game. And Nemhard's in the fourth quarter. He's talking to a reporter, which is ridiculous. Either way, Nemhard says in that interview, he says we have to play fast and we have to play random. That's part of and I think he's portraying part of that philosophy they have. It's playing fast and playing random. They're not a set team. They're random. They're play loose and quick. Part of why you lost all 3 of those games is playing random because you have a really, really good defensive team in Boston that has players like Drew Holiday, Derek White. You play random against those guys, you're going to turn the ball over. That's what they did. Game 1, turn the ball over twice or 3 times in the last minute, 30 seconds. Right? Game 3, same thing. Game 4, same thing. It's the same. It was the same script in all 3 of those games. You playing random leads to turnovers if it's not disciplined randomness. And so part of what I think Rick, and that's the philosophy that did so much good for them this year. In those clutch moments, you cannot play random like that against a team like Boston. You can't. And like whether it's timeout, calling the timeouts in certain spots. I just with a team like that that's inexperienced, playing random leads to this, and I hopefully he learns as a coach from this that hey, playing random's great for 47 minutes. It's really hard to do in the last minute and be really productive consistently. So yeah, I think he's a great philosophy coach. In-game coach, he needs to improve straight up.
I I agree. For the most part, one of the things that I don't know. Once again, joined by my guy Matt Murphy, former basketball coach. One of the things that I've said a decent amount on the show is when you go back and you watch the post game of Rick Carlisle and you hear him talk, like reporters will ask him about like specific stretches, and his response is always, "I haven't watched the tape yet."
Yeah,
And so he can't really give an answer. And then I'll watch, Joe Mazzulla for Boston, and they'll ask him about a stretch, and he can recall the play by play of everything that's happening. And part of me is like, is this just like an age thing? Is it because he's, kind of getting older that he just doesn't, that he just can't remember everything that happens? And not because he's old, but just because like a lot happens. And when you're older, your brain just doesn't move as
yeah,
fast.
yeah,
Like I'm not trying to be ageist here, but I'm
yeah.
just saying, like, I think that's a real possibility. And if that's the case, like he needs assistant coaches that can help him do that.
Mhm.
That's, I think, more of the answer. Because I think you're right. Like I think game to game, he's great. But in game, like there are definitely some questionable things and decisions that get made.
Yeah,
Because like the Pacers always start the game well.
yeah,
Like they always do because their game plan coming out is really good. And then, the Celtics or whoever, they make some sort of adjustment and there's never a counter. And so that is, I think you're exactly right. Before I let you go, the legendary Bill Walton passed yesterday. Do you have any thoughts on him?
yeah. I think people lose sight in when he was still with us, when he was on air. People lose sight of what a joyful human he was. And people were quick to make fun of and to, kind of poke fun at him for kind of the sporadic comments and the different things. Man, just he's a really, really joyful dude. And I just hope that's not lost. And it's honestly, I think, a lesson that we can all learn is like with someone who says things like that are kind of out there, puts himself out as kind of funky and weird things, like not looking at him and judging him his character just for those, like looking at all the great things he was, and hopefully, kind of how he lived and did so joyously, like such a joyous human. Um, just having that legacy, that be part of his legacy, I think is huge. Because a lot of people again remember the funny things he did on camera and the things he would say, things go on monologues. You're like, this dude's nuts, but he's so joyful, and so just that. Obviously, RIP to a legend, great basketball mind. But yeah,
Great player.
Yeah, great player. Yeah, and just to remember him for his joy and who he was, and I think anyone, and the last thing I'll say, anyone, Bill or anyone who's passed away, like looking at the impact they left on people, not the impact of things they did per se, but like the impact that they had on people, I think is a big look at like who they were character wise, as a person, and looking at the impact that he had on people around him. I think speaks volumes about his character. So RIP.
It does. It really does. Like I think a lot of times when professional athletes die that had the success that Bill Walton had, we talk about how successful they were, and when people talk about him, they're like, "I remember when I was 12 years old and he won, the title," and I just like that's a core memory for whatever reason. Like with Bill Walton, everybody's got a story about how he was just nice to them.
Yeah.
And I think it really speaks volumes to everything that you were saying, Matt. Thank you for your time as always. I'm sure we'll keep having you on to talk about whatever else is going on around Indy. Thanks for your time, man.
Yeah, take care.
See ya. That was my guy, Matt Murphy, former basketball coach, just a dude who loves Indianapolis sports. And he's always great to have on because he comes on with a level head and he tells it like it is. When we come back here in a few minutes, we're going to start to kind of recap the show, cover everything we talked about, in hour one. We're going to talk about Pacers, Celtics, why the Pacers lost that series. That's coming up here in about 3 minutes.